All right, well, the place nicknamed the Constitution State now has a new claim to fame. Connecticut is now the most expensive state to die in the United States due to some substantial new fees on estate settlements, causing a major headache for any resident with an estate worth over $2 million. Joining me now is Burkan Wealth Management Group Senior Vice President Jonathan Burkan and attorney Amy Day. Jonathan, you say this is about how accounts are set up initially. What do you mean by this?
Well, in most states, you can avoid probate and avoid probate fees by having your accounts in revocable trusts, joint tenants with right for survivorship, transfer on death. But what's crazy about Connecticut is they value the tax on the value of your estate. So it's like a separate total death tax. So even if you title your accounts in most other states to avoid probate, in Connecticut, they're going to hit you just based on your assets. The only way you could avoid it is if, like, hypothetically you were dying of cancer and you transferred all the money to your wife. They will allow a free transfer to a spouse. But if you died suddenly and you left everything to your spouse, and it was a $10 million estate, she's paying a $50,000 tax just to go to your spouse.
Wow. And then, Amy, I think about those that have an estate valued at $2 million, like right at that cutoff. This is going to really hurt people who fall right over the border, right?
Well, it's certainly increased substantially, the fees. We used to have a cap on our fees of $12,500.
No longer.
And no longer. So we are going to have estates that can pay six figures in probate fees, even without any probate assets.
I mean, this is going to drastically change the landscape for Connecticut. Is it going to attract, do you think, Jonathan, less wealthy individuals wanting to live there? I mean, we know that there's been tax incentives that have driven people to live in Connecticut for years.
As you said, it's the worst place to die in America. I have a lot of clients moving to Florida. It's a really unfortunate tax. I mean, that's what it is. It's basically a tax. And as Amy said, there's almost no way to avoid it because, again, you can avoid probate in almost every state by doing the right things, talking to people like Amy and myself. But in Connecticut, it's based on your assets. So the only way you could do is transfer all your money to your spouse. But there's negatives with doing that, too, because of stepped up in basis and other reasons. So it's making it incredibly hard for people to plan.
Amy, and by the way, they can get you going back to January 1st. This is retroactive.
It's retroactive to January 1. I have an estate now. It's a modest estate. Goes a little over the $2 million, and their fees basically went up 25%.
Wow. I mean, that's unbelievable. To think that these fees were capped at $12,500 and now those same people are seeing bills of up to $50,000. I mean, that changes. What sort of, as an attorney, what sort of response are you hearing?
Well, I think we tried very hard to explain this situation, but it's worse than $50,000. I mean, I have an estate that I'm handling now that, had they died during this year, instead of paying the $12,500 cap, would have paid $350,000 in probate fees. I mean, this is a major event for people with substantial wealth.
And all of this, Jonathan, part of this new state budget approved by Democrat Governor Malloy and the Democratic-controlled legislature of the state. Could there be a change in political power at the state if they're making so many people upset?
I don't know. Connecticut continues to put Democrats in power, and the next election isn't for 4 more years, 3 more years, so I have no idea what's going to happen 3 years from now. I have no idea.
I mean, this is going to change things. I mean, it changed Connecticut as we know it, right?
I mean, they had no income tax 20 years ago.
That's what I mean. It's driven a lot of wealthy people to that state for a long period of time, and that's changing. All right, guys, thank you very much. Thank you to Jonathan Burkan and Amy Day for joining us bright and early this morning on that. All right.